first though, we got. I mean, Tears of the Kingdom was going to be the headlining news for this week until E3 got canceled. So we need to talk about that first. There's just no getting around it. E3
Yeah.
2023,
R.I.P.
RIP. It is not happening this year. The
or
ESA
or ever.
probably ever again
They're
as
gonna
well.
they're gonna try this shit again next year, and it's gonna end just as poorly.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. Let's lay out the timeline. Let's lay out the timeline for how this news all played out this week. Okay. So at the start of the week, I think it might have been Monday or Tuesday, Ubisoft confirmed to VGC that they were not going to be at E3. Previously, they publicly stated, yeah, we'll be there. If E3 happens, we'll be there. And then this week, they said to VGC, actually, we're not going to do that. We're going to do our own show on June 12th for our own Ubisoft Forward. And when that happened, everyone was like, whoa, okay, that's weird. That's crazy. That's wild. So Sony, Nintendo, and Xbox are out. You're losing Ubisoft. Who's gonna be there? And at this point, how do you even have a show if Ubisoft isn't there? And I even said on Twitter, when you lose Ubisoft, who supports everyone, no matter what, they support everyone. If you lose Ubisoft, you know you've done something wrong. Like you lost your
I
path
don't.
somewhere along the way.
That's the thing. I don't think it's about doing something wrong as much as, well, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, the holding companies and what E3 itself has not done great the past whatever 2 3 years. But what I will say is, I think like it's not about doing something wrong. Like Ubisoft was always doing that show. It was clearly just their PR team had Ubisoft sent the message, hey, until this date, we're gonna say we're participating in E3, but actually, like they've had this in the works probably since at least last year. Because was Ubisoft part of? They were part of E3 last year, I'm guessing, right?
Was there E3 in 2022? I don't remember. I don't
Yeah, there
believe
was a
there
digital one.
was.
Greg Miller hosted it. Remember?
That was
They,
2022? I thought that was 2021. Because
I'm
there
pretty
was no
positive that
E3 in
was.
2020. I thought there was E3 2021, but then they skipped last year, I think. I think they canceled
Did they?
last year.
See, I thought it was
I'm
the other way
almost
around. I thought it was
positive.
well, 2020 got canceled for sure. I know 2020 they did not have an event. 2021, so it's either one or two. I don't know which one of
2020
those.
2021, I'm pretty sure is the year that there was E3 because if I'm right, Kieran and I were like talking about 20 E3 stuff that year. Hold on. Guardians of the Galaxy came out in 2021. Yes, it was that year. That was that year for sure. But the 2022, it was supposed to happen, and then they skipped it. And then that's what they brought in Reed Pop, and then we got to this year. That's how it went down.
Okay, yeah, yeah. 2021 there was indeed one. It's an even weirder timeline then to think about it that way. Um,
Yeah.
we should have seen this coming. That well, I mean, to be fair, I did. I kind of
Yeah.
said that this year was going to be terrible and that it would never happen again. I was just somehow now I feel like an idiot for not even calling this. But to be fair, it's kind of ballsy to be like it's going to be canceled before it even happens.
Well, well, hold on. Let's break down the rest of this timeline here. All right. Ubisoft said they're going to bounce out. IGN a day later, I think, reports that Sega and Tencent were also not going to be there amid like other rumors that the show might not be happening. The IGN report is much more lengthy. I think it was Kat Bailey and Rebecca Valentine both put this report out and all. Great job, by the way. The two of them killing it over there, like in games journalism.
Both
It's
of
like
them are great. Yeah.
also bathing. But like the whole report is very lengthy, good read though, giving insight. Like publishers were like more publishers were like unsure whether they were going to be there or whether the show was even going to happen. And then in their report, they're saying that like Repop was kind of feeling a bit of betrayal from like publishers who was saying, yeah, we'll be there, but actually they were now like walking their statements back and all. So then Thursday comes along, and the ESA and Repop both put out a statement. They both announced that the event was canceled officially, which very shocking. Shocking from the perspective of you brought in Reed Pop after last year and the year before. You brought in Reed Pop, who puts together PAX, New York Comic Con, other conventions and all, like, great at putting together conventions. In the gaming space, specifically PAX, which is highly, I guess you could say, revered amongst the gaming community for conventions and all like that. You bring in Reed Pop, which is kind of like seeming like a sign of, okay, we're looking to an expert to really help us reinvigorate this show. And some of the
Oh, see, I
plans
didn't
that
take it that way, but
That's how I took it. And then you announce some of these plans of like things that they're trying to do for the show, where you're gonna have industry days only, and then business and then public days, and then they're each gonna be like in their own separate venues, which is addressing critiques that the media have had for years, ever since E3 went public. Of we're trying to go to our appointments, but we're on these lines with like with all the public. So like, how are we supposed to even get to things we need to get to and do our jobs and all like that? So like they're making these changes that are sounding like, okay, these are changes in the right direction. But then, in recent months, we're hearing these things of, hey, people still haven't gotten much clarity on what's happening with E3 this year. It's still unknown what's going on, who's going to be
I
there. And it's just like, damn, this is how we get to here. And it's just a damn shame.
all I want to say, I want to put on the record, if you believed any of that stuff about about the if you sold the line E3 sold you uh last year, then I'd like to sell you a bridge, because it was, I don't know, to me last year felt like a death knell. Not having one after having one in 2021 felt huge. 2021 being kind of, it sucked, let's just be real. It's not
Yeah, it
good.
was like it was digital only. It was kind of like it. I'm looking back on it. I think 2021's felt like a thrown together attempt to do something digitally, but like it just there was no real organization behind it actually working out. It was just like, let's try to make this digital without any expertise on how to do this digitally. It just didn't work out in any shape or way, shape or form at all.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing. They brought in Reed Pop, but like I think bringing in a parent company that's, or a company that's good at organizing fan events, is like, that was never, even in E3's heyday, the reason why fans were there were not because this was a fan convention. It was always because this mattered to the industry. It was the place to be because it was the only place you could get this source of information. So I think that's a misreading on E3's part. They're associating with, like, we were at our height, we were at our zenith when people wanted to go here desperately and like would pay whatever they could to get a fake press badge, or some phony whatever. Back in like the 04, 05, back before it shut down, it got way too tight, and then it laxed a little bit, but it's never recovered as far as like pure numbers and relevancy. But at the same time, in 2013-14, the digital media landscape hadn't evolved to the point where like everyone was doing directs and everyone had this direct form of communication. It was kind of like that awkward middle ground in the transition into where we're at now. So they, to me, were just like, hey, it used to be really popular when a lot of people were here. That's how we get our clout back. But it's like, your clout's gone, man. And clout was all you ever had. All you ever truly were was a name that was associated with a time period that we all dearly love. Well, people our age that like were way too dorky about video games and the news. And like, as much as I have nostalgia for that and it's near and dear to my heart, it became obvious that like Keeley understood what made that special and was trying to harness it in a way that was like actually attainable and realistic for 2022 at the time, 2023 now, in the future going forward. Like, as corny as sometimes his events can be a little bit, and like I have my criticisms, I do think Keeley ultimately cares about video games and making sure they stay relevant, and I think he understands it. And like, this is RIP to E3, but it's only to the dumb company in name, which was never what it was about. To me, Christmas in June still lives on, even if it's, I think I saw in the comments someone put, it's like Christmas Hanukkah now, or it's, instead of Christmas in June, it's Hanukkah in June. It's just more spread out.
Oh
It's like over
god.
7 days instead of just like you're getting everything. You wake up and you're like, that was the
Right.
3 days of chaos. Now it's like a 2 week span of just like, okay, whose direct is today? Okay, yep, we're gonna go see that one.
Yeah.
And companies avoiding each other and stepping over their toes. Whereas like, man, those Mondays, especially when it was like Microsoft in the morning, and then, or would they do it Sundays, either, or Microsoft in the morning and then like Sony at night, followed by whatever, like Ubisoft, who cares?
Ubisoft would be in the
And
middle. Sunday was,
yeah,
I mean, Sony was always the last one to go.
yeah. And those days were awesome because it felt so loaded. And now it just feels ludicrous because companies want, the whole day to themselves. They want to be what people talk about in that news cycle.
Uh-huh.
And ultimately, I don't necessarily know if like I think those are all still fleeting attempts. I think if your game's not good, we're just not going to talk about it. Um, and at the end of the day, you'll still get your ass beat by whatever Sony puts out there if it's good, or Tears of the Kingdom. It's but at the same time, I get it. They want to maximize potential eyeballs and viewership and blah blah blah. This is the end result of analytics, crossing with marketing and sales. So E3 is just it's a dinosaur, in its state.
Yeah,
Long
and
live Summer Games Fest.
I'm gonna get to that, but I want to like just refer to this interview that GamesIndustry.biz did with the president and CEO of the ESA, Stanley Pierre Lewis. Um, so it's a lengthy interview. I recommend reading the whole thing. But I just pulled like three specific points, main talking points from it. One being what went wrong, two being how would E3 return if it does, and three, will it be back next year? So the first one, what went wrong? Here's what Mr. Pierre Louis had to say. He says, quote, we were off to a strong start. And this is just part of his full answer, but I boiled it down to like this part right here. He says, quote, we were off to a strong start. There was interest among exhibitors, industry players, media, and certainly the fans. Ultimately, however, there were challenges that proved too large to surmount. First, several companies have reported that the timeline for game development has been altered since the start of the COVID pandemic. Second, economic headwinds have caused several companies to reassess how they invest in large marketing events. And third, companies are starting to experiment with how to find the right balance between in-person events and digital marketing opportunities. With all that said, we remain committed to providing a platform for industry marketing and convening, but we want to make sure we find the right balance for the industry's current and ongoing needs, end quote. And I think this is something, what he says here is something that I kind of have heard some other people in games media talk about in the months and weeks leading up to today, well, this week's announcement.
Yeah.
When like I remember hearing specifically in regards to Microsoft and Nintendo when the rumors were like, hey, that they weren't going to be there. So I remember, I think it was Andy Robinson, might have been him specifically, it was multiple people saying like, with inflation being a thing right now, and there certainly normally would have been more clarity in terms of what was happening with E3 and all, and just the ease of directs and everything. It seemed like Microsoft was probably going to be it made sense for Microsoft to pull out if they were going to pull out at the time, because marketing budget, we could just instead use that marketing budget on our own thing. Same for Nintendo. It's like, okay, well, we don't really have too much to show past Pikmin, maybe. But we could also just use that money for our own things. And then again, there is the game dev side of things of COVID and all like that, and how also just game development is taking longer. So hey, multiple companies might not have things to show and all like that. And then again, just that experimenting between, all right, do we go in person for this? Do we just do a hey, here's a Capcom special event today, if for half an hour or so? Like, do we just do one of those things? What's easier? What makes the most sense? So it like all those things taken into account, it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, everyone might have been interested at first, but then, as the world changed in the past year, just, the economy and stuff, and then people just also realizing, hey, you know what? Maybe it doesn't make sense for us to pay to be at E3. We could just do our own thing. Because it's not even just like paying to be a part of E3. It's also like, all right, if we're going to have a booth, then we need people staffing the booths. We need stuff at the booths and all like that. We need to build the booths, like all those things and all. We need to pay for things to be trapped, to send things over there and all. Like, it's a giant cost. And it's like, what's the return on investment? If how great is that when we could just maybe do something ourselves? So that's one side of things. And I could understand if ReedPop and the ESA, specifically ReedPop, to stay with the one putting it together, might feel a bit blindsided by like the sudden change of everyone, like the exhibitors, they're like sudden change of heart where it's like, hey, you all were into it at first and all, but now you're backing out and now we're left with nothing to do for a show. But we were working with like, because the thing is, ReedPop would like, they took everyone's like their desires for the show. They're like, all right, you all want to do these things, cool, we'll do these things, so on and so forth. And then everyone who said they wanted to do these things said, actually, you know what, we're gonna, instead of going to this club, we're gonna go to that club instead. And they were like, wait,
funny.
hold on.
You said club because that was my analogy. This comes across as like a super desperate dorky guy, like inviting all of his friends, including like the the hot people, and just like all of them, hot girls in this analogy because it's a dorky dude, and they're just like, well, we're not gonna go because so and so, Chad or Michael or whatever is not going, and then that's Sony and that's Microsoft, and then who Ubisoft was like the last one or whatever, and then everyone else was just like their regular friends, and then they got all the indies were their regular friends, and then they got mad because it was just their friends. Down to like, you know what? Never mind, the event's canceled, and you're just like, my guy, they were never that into you.
But then we also have the question of, all right, so how would E3 return if it does? Here's what he had to say. It says, quote, what we want to make sure we are doing is providing a platform that works for the needs of the industry. That means continuing to ask the questions we were asking in the last round, but also monitoring how they want to deploy their assets in an evolving world. But we also need to be mindful that we are in the midst of a very different period for industry in terms of game development and economic headwinds. So we want to make sure we are providing a platform in a way that is sustainable for today and in the future. It's a matter of finding the right pitch. And I mean that in the sound way for the needs that are evolving. They're continuing to experiment with how they market their works. We're seeing other shows coming back slowly, but coming back. They're at a different scale and investment commitment than E3, so we have to continue to work on how we create a dynamic and sustainable model that meets the needs of the industry. End quote. Again,
Not
just
happening. E3's dead, guys.
right. So, you know what? Perfect segue. Will E3 be back in 2024? That was a direct question that was asked. Quote, we're committed to providing an industry platform for marketing and convening, but we want to make sure we find that right balance that markets the needs of that meets the needs of the industry. We're certainly going to be listening and ensuring whatever we want to offer meets those needs. And at that time, we will have more news to share. End quote. To me, that is a bit of a non-answer. It's an answer that says
A
maybe,
bit of a
maybe
non-answer.
it's a maybe we'll be back in the future,
That's
but don't count on it type of
Yeah,
thing.
that's the most non-answer ever. But to me, that reads as like no, but we're gonna potentially try. But
Yeah, it says no for next year. To me, it says no for next year. We want to come back in the future, but it's no for next year. And I guess that goes
but
into the final question. Like, do we have any faith that it's going to return, period? Not next year, just period at any point in the future.
no. And here's why: because the only way it would have ever come back is they sold the naming rights, or they sold them naming rights, whatever it would be, to Keeley, and he gets to rebrand it as E3. But I don't think he wants it at this point. I think he's like, fuck you guys. Summer Games Fest is my own, and it's the new E3. Everyone gets it without needing it to be called E3, and I'll do this on my own. Um, is my read of it. I don't think yeah, I just don't think we're gonna see E3, especially under this like parent company under the actual ESA and everything. Um, it's not coming back.
Yeah, and like I personally don't think it is either. Like after it was canceled last year, right? I was always of the mindset of okay, they say they're coming back next year. Next year needs to be that year where like it's the make or break year of okay, whatever you attempt, if it works out, cool, you got a chance to come back in 2024. If it doesn't work, like if you have the show happen and it doesn't work out, maybe you can or maybe you don't. But if the show doesn't happen in 2023, we're probably not getting another E3 again because
Yeah,
as he says here, like E3, no matter what your thoughts on it, E3 is on another scale compared to other showcases, and it's a big thing. So for to not have it happen again, like it's one of those things where I think the final domino fell. Humpty Dumpty fell down for the last time. We can't put them back together again, and like any attempt to do so you'd have to really rethink okay how do we put you together again to make you stick like we need to take actual time to do that and I think that's more than just a year. I think that's like 2-3 years before E3 potentially comes back if it ever does and then even then when it comes back
it would
at
have to
that
come back
point
as a fan fest. It just wouldn't be.
that's the thing like when it comes back it sounds like it's going to be if it ever comes back it'll be in a very different form and let's say it is 2 years from now so 2025 or 2026 right who's to say that whatever form it is at that point in time is up to the need. It's like up to the needs of the industry at that point. Who's to say it's at that level of okay, everything is way more digital. You get what I mean? Or it's you know I know what I want to say, just putting it together into
Yeah, you're
words.
good.
But like, is it up to par, up to the standard, to the current industry standard at that time of what marketing is, of what networking is in terms of getting news out, sharing stuff, different teams meeting, so on and so forth, media coming together to share news and do these demos and all like that. Like, is it up to that standard at that point in time? Because the standard for companies divulging this news and putting out news has changed so much in the past 5 years, where before you only had Nintendo doing directs to now you have literally everyone and their mother doing a digital event at some point in one way, shape, or form. Many of them aren't that good, but basically everyone is doing them now because it's just so much easier and so much more convenient to be able to share the news when you want on your own terms, as opposed to having to put together a demo for a specific time of the year and share a bunch of your news at a specific time of the year, because that is what that's what the industry what's the word, the industry has like typically required of everyone. Everyone needs to be here in June for E3 with a demo and all your big news, as opposed to now it's like, all right, we can share our news on a random Wednesday, on a random
Yeah.
Wednesday on any month of the year, like at any hour we want to. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I I don't think it'll be back. I don't have much faith. The part of inside though, I want it to return because of the nostalgia. E3 has, I've said it to you before, but E3 has always meant like so much to me. I have so many fond memories of watching E3 as a kid on G4, or just watching the streams, on YouTube, let's say like 2013 on and all like that. I have so many fond memories of it. It means a whole lot to me. And like, I've seen people say this, and it's so true. The energy that you get from like E3 events, like E3, like press conferences and all, is such a different energy from just like the directs and the streams that we get these days. Like, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, you have that pop off when you see the first ever gameplay for Marvel's Wolverine, right? And like a state of play or PlayStation Showcase. Yeah, you'll have a pop off, but it's a very different pop off than seeing it on the E3 stage. It's a different
Yeah,
type of energy that's there, and like it's something that can't be replicated. And I miss that. I miss that. I miss just seeing the people themselves, come out on the stage and talk about their thing. Yes, we might still see them in a digital like direct or the showcase, but it's just something is missing when it's pre-recorded as opposed to live on stage. You
it's
get what I mean?
oh, I know what you mean, because it's like it's the same intangible reason we all like going to the movie theaters. Um, it like objectively, there's not much of a difference other than like, oh, big screen, but it's like, okay, well, I mean, does that really matter? It's not gonna be on the big screen forever. You're also paying more. It's just a more of a hassle and a setup for everyone involved. Wouldn't a more efficient way to do this just be to deliver it directly to people? Which
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's more incentive for the movie industry to keep on pushing movie theaters versus like the games industry. This is purely just for marketing. But ultimately, it's those same intangibles that you like. You like the smell of popcorn. You like it's fun to sit in this chair and go somewhere, and it feels special. E3 felt special and different. But here's the thing: it's never coming back that way. If it comes back
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
any form, it's just gonna be fucking PAX. It's gonna be a different version under a different name, and they might throw out Ubisoft, or they may rein in one or two, like big publishers, but like they're never getting Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo back. Let's establish that. Not happening. Period. Guarantee Keeley will have Microsoft on a deal. He may have Sony. Nintendo will probably continue to do their own thing, but I think they partnered with him last year. So who knows? They're never getting any one of those backs, and it'll never have the clout or relevancy. We just have to be happy we got to experience that. Because
Yeah.
ultimately, what this means is all the 13 to 18-year-olds that watch Twitch don't give a shit about that. They're just I want to see what cool new games there are.
Yeah. The genie's out the bottle at this point. Like, the genie left the bottle in 2020. once COVID happened and everyone had to start doing their own things, that was the point where it was like, oh man, is
Yeah, it hit the
E3.
gas on what was an inevitability,
Mm-hmm.
anyways.
Exactly. Like it definitely accelerated that timeline by at least 5 years. At
Because
bare
everyone was forced to, like, all of the not forward thinking companies were forced to do this thing. They were probably like, the heads were scared to do, oh, it's a digital event. Oh, what do we have to do? And then they realized it's just paying Greg and Mike and Tim from wherever to just sit there and
minimum.
edit together. And they're just like, all right, here's the camera. Boss, get in front of the camera. And then once they were done, they were like, oh shit, that was it. What did that cost us? Oh, nothing else, because we already pay these people. Oh, we maybe hired a couple out of studio editors and shit. Like, they're like, that's it. Oh, we're never going back to E3. They're like,
Exactly.
that was super easy. Why was I scared of this the whole time? And then it was just like, it's just that on a bigger level, and a bunch of people just being like, yeah, we're done here, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. And it's like, I know you said that before that, like, Jeff Keighley got us with Summer Games Fest. And like, yeah, Summer Games Fest is cool. It's never going to be on the level of E3. I mean, I personally don't think it will, just because of partially because of the clout and nostalgia associated with E3, but also Summer, in my eyes, E3 typically more hits than misses than Summer Games Fest. And granted, Summer Games Fest, this is only the technically fourth year it's going to be happening. And of course, Jeff is only constrained by what he's given. But Summer Games Fest hasn't always been a hitter. It can be pretty missy in comparison to E3, where like it's generally more of a hit than a miss. And even when like, someone's show might be a bit lackluster, like let's say Nintendo's show at E3 might be a bit lackluster. Okay, theirs might have been, but you still got Sony and Microsoft
Well,
and EA
to
and
be clear,
Ubisoft.
Summer Games Fest is the new name brand attached to it. And I
Yeah.
think as long as it's there, people will still rally around this time of the year. I think that's why Summer Games Fest is important, because, and why it needs to be successful for this to continue, is I do think there's still a want and a desire at the same time to come together and like present these things, but is they need a rallying point. Whereas like, if that's not there, then all of a sudden maybe Sony or whoever, or even Microsoft. I think Sony's kind of like, what year was it? Was it last year that they didn't do? No, they did a presentation in early June last year. It was like, maybe it was 2021, where they were just like, we're not going to do that.
I forgot how it went in 2021. It's been a
But
while.
but if then all of a sudden studio or publishers start pulling out of that, then that'll suck to me. But to me, it's the new name brand of E3. But really, E3 is in our hearts as early June, the first. And now it's, like I said, that with that comment, or yeah, I think I said it on the pod. The analogy of, it's now just Hanukkah in June instead of Christmas in June. It's just spread out over 2 weeks now, and it's a bunch of different events. But as long as we have that, as long as there's a lot of things to get excited about, we know we can look forward to it. Is it a bummer that it's not spread out like over a jam-packed 3.5 days? Yeah, but at the same time, we'll all live. Like, it'll
Yeah.
still be a lot of fun, but we need, I think, Games Fest. We need a central point for everyone else to kind of anchor their time frames around, even if they're not actually a part of it. Um, Versus like, if that doesn't hold up, then all of a sudden Microsoft has one in June, Sony has one in October, Nintendo has one in March, which will still, all be fine. But it'll be more boring, in my opinion.
I like your outlook on it. I like your outlook on it. It gives your final statements right there kind of gave me a bit more of an optimistic view on things.
It's fine to be optimistic about this. It's E3 is just a sad shell of itself. You didn't want, it's like your grandpa or grandma. You don't want the last memories of it to be it on its deathbed being, "Ugh," and that would have been this year with E3, would have been like, oh,
Hey,
that's
you know what? You said exactly what Imran Khan said on Twitter. He said, I think he said it after it got announced that E3 was canceled. He said, I feel like no E3 is better than a bad E3,
yeah,
which is, you know what? It's
100%.
like it's very true. Because like
Yeah.
if it was to happen, it would have been like, what was the point of this? You could have just done nothing instead, and that would have been
20,
better off.
2021 was already like, they're not doing well, and you're just like, oh man, I don't know how much longer they have. And then this would have been coming back, like I said, where there's like, I can't remember you, and you're like, shit. But instead you avoided that, and you were just like, oh man. But your last memory was kind of shaky, but other than that, nothing but pristine memories.